Coca-Cola. It's 9:30 on Thursday, October the 18th. Good morning and welcome to this live edition of Analysis. In the programme today, after all the leaks, the launch. The Apple Classic finally appears, along with a few new models. As the laptop market gets into gear, we look at the modular version in the space-style packing. In Face to Face, we find out what's behind the headlines in the latest wave of hacking stories. And the world of OS 2, what has happened to the so-called light version. This week, Apple kicked off a $45 million advertising and promotional campaign with the launch of 3 low-cost Macintosh computers. We spoke to Mike Newton, Apple UK's new managing director, about new products and new directions.
Walls have come down. Opportunity has gone up. And your only limits will be the size of your ideas and the degree of your dedication. People, this is an exciting time to be alive.
Our success to date in the marketplace, we've probably certainly gained a reputation for quality, but I think also perhaps a reputation for premium pricing. And I think the new products that we've announced yesterday to fill out our range are certainly addressing that issue. They're far more competitively priced at the low end, and I think give us the opportunity to go for a much stronger market share in unit terms in the UK.
Who's your ideal customer then for the classic range, certainly?
I think each of the new machines that we've announced, which is the Classic, the LC and the SI, have particular points of appeal to different customers. But I think if you ask me on the Classic particularly, I think there for a starting price of £575, we've got a black and white Macintosh, which has got the screen and the CPU in one compact design. And I think that's going to appeal particularly students perhaps who have a limited budget and where the compact design and transportability of that is appealing.
Yeah, and where do they fit in the range?
The theme of all 3 products is certainly affordability. They all come in as starting a new entry point into the range. The Macintosh Classic certainly comes in as the most affordable Macintosh for people who really want to have access to Macintosh technology and want to have it at the most affordable price. And the Macintosh Classic at $575, as Mike mentions, certainly allows for that to be achieved. Going up from that, the Macintosh LC takes the theme of affordability still, but adds the option of flexible screens and colour, and for a full colour system with a hard disk for under £1,500, certainly allows for people to have colour Macintosh at otherwise unheard of price in the past. The Macintosh 2 SI then comes into that to really give access to Macintosh, and particularly to Macintosh 2 technology, making it the most affordable way into the Macintosh 2 range, giving full access to the performance of the Macintosh 2 range of products, along with the full option of new bus expandability and the choice of different sized screens to go with that too.
You've got some interesting features, Mike, haven't you, on these, which are now possible on the whole range, really. Can you just tell me a little bit about what those features are?
Well, I think there's one new innovative feature which appears on the SI and the LC, which is the opportunity for sound input. So you can start to annotate documents with sound input. You can also, which can also be used to help explain documents that you pass on to others. I think there are also more fundamental standards that we've introduced across the range, such as introducing the 1.4 megabyte high-density floppy disk drives on all our machines, which make it possible now to interchange disks between Apple Macintosh and any IBM PC or compatible.
All Macintosh systems now, with the introduction of these 3 new Macintosh, are able to actually read and write to IBM OS2 and MS-DOS disks. In fact, I've actually got a Lotus 123 disk here, and with the aid of some software called Access PC, I can actually put this disk straight into the Macintosh drive. It goes into the system, and immediately on the desktop of the Macintosh system actually appears an icon of that MS-DOS disk. So here's a Macintosh now, which is not an IBM compatible, fully able to actually see and access the information that's held on disks from other systems. So it certainly does mean within companies where there are mixed machines from IBM or from Compaq from other manufacturers, as well as Macintosh, at the very simplest level, there was very easy ability to actually take information from one disk from many IBM MS-DOS applications into the Macintosh environment itself. Actually, with the use of the Access PC, I'm fully able to actually then look at the icon of that floppy disk drive and then be able to double-click one of those icons themselves, and immediately from that actually launch up a Macintosh spreadsheet program. In this particular case, I would actually launch up Microsoft Excel. So here, in fact, is an icon of a file created in Lotus 123 on a PC. Double-clicking that will then actually launch up Microsoft Excel, and then I can actually see that information from 123 actually represented on the Macintosh screen. And immediately there's that information. I've had to do nothing to it to actually change the way that information is created. I can even choose, if I wanted to actually just take a selection of that and choose to actually make a graphic of that if I wanted to. So very easy integration of information from the MS-DOS world into the Macintosh world. To give you another example, I can actually show the use of the voice input and sound capability of the Macintosh that we've now got with the Macintosh LC and of the Macintosh 2 SI. And here, for example, is with a product called Full Impact from Ashton Tate, the use of sound annotation within the Macintosh spreadsheets. And this particular case is actually a spreadsheet from the finance department, and there's actually quite a bit of voice input in that.
For help in completing this expense report, click on the column headings.
So here I can actually fill in the actual spreadsheet with the aid of sound input.
Meals should not exceed $30 per day. Picking up the check for someone falls under entertainment.
And actually here voice input that was put in there by our lovable financial administrator.
How are you going to sell these? Obviously, the dealership has been used to selling high-value, very, very high-margin products. How are you actually putting over the sales of the new machines to them? How are you selling the machines to your dealer base, in actual fact?
Well, I think the important thing to remember for them is that the new machines that we're announcing or have just announced yesterday don't represent a sudden shift of Apple from being a high-end company now to being a low-end company. It's a filling out of our range. And I think there are some dealers that are going to remain at the top end of that range, selling high-value, high-added value, premium serviced systems to people. At the same time, there are many of our dealers who are anxious to take advantage in the mainstream marketplace and use the LC, the Classic, and the SI to do just that.
So you're going to be adding new dealers, presumably, who are already selling perhaps PC compatibles?
Well, I think the answer to that is that we see our current channel as being quite capable of taking advantage of the products that we've just announced. We don't see a need to expand it in a whole lot of different directions.
Finally, you've been in the job of MD of Apple UK for 2 weeks. What are your plans for the first 12 months? What sort of mark are you going to make on Apple UK?
Okay, well, I can't imagine a more exciting time to become the Managing Director of Apple UK. And I think I'm going to harness the strategy that the whole corporation is pursuing right now, which is to make the Macintosh range affordable across a broader line and go for a push for increased market share in the UK.
Your background is very much in customer relations, the customer sort of relations area. Are you going to change the way you sell the machines to your customers? Do you see any major shifts ahead?
I think we've made great efforts in the last few years to build a channel with Apple Centres, as you know, being a major part of that channel, where service is something that's highly focused on. I think that's paid dividends in that research we've done with our customers shows that 99% of them would recommend a Mac to a friend or a colleague. So for me, it's not just the product that turns up in the box that's important, it's very much the service that the dealer can add to that as well. I think the new products are going to pose challenges to the dealers because I think there's one set of premium priced services which perhaps are appropriate for the high end of our range. I think when one's buying a Macintosh for £575, then clearly you want a quality service but not premium priced service, and I think that's what our channel is going to have to respond to.
Do you think we'll ever see a clone market develop for Apple products?
I think Apple is far more open-minded to the idea of licensing its technology. That's not something we've done to date, but I certainly don't think it should be ruled out in the future.
There's talk of, well, Sony have said they're developing a portable with you. News last week that was hitting everything else. You've really sort of licensed outward technology to, is outward or outbound technology to develop technology to develop a portable. Are you going to be working on a newer, more fully functional portable, perhaps with Sony?
Well, we haven't, to respond to the outbound comment, we haven't actually licensed them to do anything. We've just agreed that they can develop their product without actually infringing any of our licenses. But with Sony particularly, we've had a major partnership with Sony over some years. They're a major supplier to Apple, and we're exploring ways in which we can develop that relationship. But I think we're conscious that as the marketplace develops, alliances of various sorts are going to become more and more necessary and desirable. And clearly we're in discussion with a number of companies as to how that might benefit Apple and themselves in the future.
The new range of Macintosh machines, and an overview there from Managing Director Mike Newton. Perhaps an appropriate name for a man running a company called Apple. Well, as seen in the papers this week, electronics group STC is for sale. The company is valued at £1.6 billion and is said to be hoping for a takeover from a European company. Analysts are tipping France's Alcatel and Canada's Northern Telecom, which already has a 27% stake in the company. Other possible buyers include Siemens of Germany, Ericsson of Sweden and Fujitsu of Japan, who recently acquired 80% of ICL from STC. Well, on the telephone now from Paris, we have Dennis Gilhooly, Editor-in-Chief of Communications Week International, for his comments. Hello, Dennis. Hello, Dennis, do we have you on the line from Paris? Well, seem to have a bit of a problem with the call there. We'll hopefully come back to Dennis if we can get him. He may be coming through. Dennis obviously has been had the opportunity to talk with some of the leading players, and we'll be talking with Alcatel next week. We're hoping that perhaps he will give us some comments on that. We'll try one more time. Dennis, are you with us?
Hello, Ken.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Right, Dennis.
Okay.
We finally got through to you. That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about how this news has been received? It obviously was well known that STC were looking for a buyer. What's been the general reaction?
Yeah, I think across the industry, particularly in Europe, the first thing is that this comes as no surprise, particularly after Fujitsu's ICL acquisition earlier this year. STC was always vulnerable. But that said, an acquisition may not be imminent. I think the fact that STC sales to British Telecom are significantly down this year makes it a somewhat less attractive option.
Do you think the general view will be to break up the company?
That's a good question. There is a lot of synergy between most of the product lines in STC now, so it would really depend on the particular buyer as to whether certain parts were divested, I think.
What about Alcatel? Do you really feel they're the most likely?
Probably the most likely is Northern Telecom to solidify its position in the UK market. Northern has had some success with British Telecom recently in the international public switching exchange arena, and they'll be hoping to build on that. Alcatel may have its hands full with its recent, it wasn't an acquisition, but deal with Fiat in Italy, whereby it gained control of Teletra, which is one of the largest transmission manufacturers in Europe, and Teletra has a large presence in Italy and in Spain. Alcatel's chairman, Pierre Suard, has stated that he wants the group to expand into the UK. And it would be rather ironic because STC was, in fact, part of the ITT group, which Alcatel took over in 1987.
And a quick word on Ericsson, Dennis. They obviously are fairly cash-rich.
Yes. My take on Ericsson is that they already have a fairly strong position in the UK at the moment. They are somewhat weak in transmission, but it's doubtful whether the submarine cable business of STC, which is one of the largest parts of its business, would fit into the Ericsson core business strategy.
Okay, well, we'll have to watch the situation very carefully. I hear you also have some news for us about international call tariffs. What's the situation there?
Yeah, the events are moving rather quickly in this area. There's been a lot of publicity about high rates on tariffs in the general press recently. So Brian Carlsberg recommended recently that international resale, which will allow independent companies rather than the telecoms administrations to enter the market to resell basic voice capacity would probably be allowed if the UK government sanctions it later this year. That will mean, in the first case, that resale will happen between the United States and the UK, and this will have a tremendous downward pressure on international tariffs, not only across the Atlantic, but also in Europe. Carlsberg's announcement was immediately followed by British Telecom and Mercury negotiating separate accounting rates, which is the rates they negotiate with carriers in foreign countries, which would halve that accounting rate within 2 years. And really the ball on international tariffs is moving very quickly, and I think most people can expect very reduced tariffs within the next 2 years.
So it looks like finally the war against the so-called cartel is beginning to have some effect.
The so-called cartel,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
The club,
Well,
yeah.
thanks very much, Dennis, and we look forward to monitoring the situation further.
Okay,
Bye
cheers,
for now.
yeah. Bye now.
Cheers. Well, IBM's been talking about the OS/2 operating system since 1987. It's been dubbed the upgrade to MS-DOS. That's perhaps unfair, since it's a far more sophisticated platform than most people realize, supporting a whole new way of working with computers. However, sales have been slow, it's expensive, and takes up a lot of memory. Armed with a fairly healthy amount of skepticism, Computer Channel visited the OS/2 user show yesterday and asked why anybody would want to buy it.
Well, OS2 is really the development platform and what people will be running, we see in the future, for running mission-critical applications in their business. The places that it's probably the most beneficial for companies to look at right now are using it as a network operating system, so they can be connecting not only around work groups, but also then to wide area networks and to mainframes to be able to pull information and be able to use information within their company. Second area then is primarily focused around mission-critical applications or line-of-business applications, things where companies would typically be running a mini or a mainframe or heavy workstations in the company. They'll actually be able to then develop in-house applications to be able to run their business and to be able to downsize some of the costing that they're putting in for computers in the company.
You really wouldn't run OS2 on a standalone machine?
I wouldn't really recommend running OS2 as a standalone computer. For that platform, we would see Windows being the optimal solution. With the announcement that we made with IBM on September 17th, we were very clearly stating that even though people are running Windows, let's say on a standalone computer, or on a network within a department or a work group, that those people will actually be able to take those same Windows applications and run them on future versions of OS2 2.x or OS2 3.x in the future.
I mean, we've heard a lot of rumors about cut-down versions of OS2 appearing soon, like version 1.3, for example. I mean, is it a real product or is it just hype?
Well, first of all, I have no product to announce today in that realm. But secondly, IBM and ourselves are working very hard to try to bring down the memory requirements for OS2, and that's an ongoing process.
Okay. What sort of alternative applications can you develop for OS2 in the future in terms of database server applications, for example?
Well, what we're showing here on our stand today is literally the theme of it's information at your fingertips. So somebody can work whether they're using a Windows application or an OS2 application and be able to literally sit behind a desk and access not only the information off a server, but information maybe across a wide area net from another country or also from a mainframe. And it's really the key for the direction that computing's going in the 90s, to be able to take data that's within a company and actually turn it into information that's usable for somebody within the company to help them make decisions or to run their business.
Of course, getting information from one part of your company to another and turning it into something meaningful is not an easy task. Chris Randall's International Marketing Director of Software Publishing explains why.
Corporations have made huge investments in information technology, in front-end computing, and databases, whether that be on the server, a mini computer, or a mainframe. And the problem today is that getting at the data, the strategic data in those databases, is very difficult. Users have to become programmers, and even if they can crack the code to get into a certain database, they have no chance of really getting to multiple databases. So they're walled in by database, if you like.
So what is a client-server relationship? We hear a lot about it.
What is it and how does it work?
Well, the conventional mode of computing today is standalone. People think of a DOS machine plugged into a printer. Today, most PCs in a corporate environment are connected to a LAN. And the LAN gives extra power to the front end, to the end user. What client server means is an application doesn't run in just one location. The application runs simultaneously both on the server and at the front end, the client if you like, and they work cooperatively. It's not quite cooperative processing, but we're on the path to that with the convergence of computing from mainframe right down to the front end. So that what you're looking at is not lots of little pieces of computing around an organization making the sum of that computing, but an enterprise-wide solution. What Info Alliance does is enable the client, the end user, through the server code to access data in multiple sources wherever it resides. And that may be around a building, it may be around the world.
Is this the way people are working, though, in terms of computing, or is this all the way people will be working in the very near future?
Well, it's the way that leading-edge companies are beginning to work, and it's the way that we see computing going in the 90s. I think you have to understand that the value of data in databases is enormous to companies. Getting at that data is very, very difficult. And MIS departments, end-user computing departments, today are being plagued by people saying, I would like an application to go and find out how much I've sold, to find out how much my marketing costs are, how much my insurance is. And getting at that data could be a source of great competitive advantage.
To meet the need for achieving that competitive advantage, Lotus has launched a new product under OS2 called Notes.
Well, Lotus Notes is a group communication product. What it really does is allows people to gather, to organize, and to disseminate information. It's based around local area PC networks. Because today, many organizations have what you might call indigestion with information overload. And that information needs to be structured and organized in ways that make sense to the business decision maker.
How does Notes do that?
Well, Notes allows users to collect information in from disparate sources, say word processors, spreadsheets, other electronic mail services that people may have, to get that in and then to reorganize and reorient that information to get the view that people might want. And then, having done that, perhaps to disseminate that information to groups of users who need to know about it so that they can perhaps contribute their ideas back in. Notes is essentially covers the 4 types of communications that people might get involved with in any day-to-day business activity. That is one-to-one, where you have perhaps traditionally associated that with electronic mail packages. One-to-many, where you're talking about broadcast newswire type services. Many-to-one, executive information systems, where people are feeding information up to the chief executive for him to get a global view of the information. And then many-to-many, a new type of communication for computers, where you're allowing people to conference around a local area network and contribute ideas, say in product development or market research. Notes encapsulates all those types of communications, and that's really what makes it different.
David, what do you think of the OS2 user show then?
Very disappointing. It's a very small show. If there's more than 40 stands there, I'll be surprised. It's less than 1 floor of Olympia 2, which compared to the really big shows that we've had at Olympia it's tiny. And there was actually nothing there that struck me as particularly new or exciting. As you say, no new release of 1.3.
We did, however, see a version, didn't we? We managed to see intelligent environment showing OS2 running inside 2 megabytes, which happened to be the official version, but they're under another guise in a way.
Yes, but they wouldn't really admit to it very much, and all the signs on the stand still said 1.2, and it was very obvious that they'd expected an IBM announcement and had it denied. I mean, it was very obvious that what they were expecting to show there was the 1.3 that they'd got. And I think it was very obvious they were quite disappointed at not being able to talk about what they'd got there.
It was quite ironic because the intelligent environment stand was very close to the Microsoft stand, so when Brian was saying, no announcement today, he must have had a wry smile on his face when seeing what within 10 yards of himself was a version of 1.3 running on someone else's machine. Yeah, well,
there was the Microsoft stand, the corner of the IBM stand, and the one with 1.3 on it. It was actually in sight when he was saying that. I mean,
it's worth pointing out, however, probably at this point, that IBM is launching a couple of new machines quite soon, which will then have 1.3 on them. And of course, they had them at the launch of machines has been late, hence the arrival of the software. So
yes,
probably around a while.
Probably fair.
In terms of other manufacturers, there weren't any, were there?
No. In fact, I've spoken to at least one manufacturer since who carries OS2 as part of his major line. He actually carries every single component of OS2. And he was actually quite miffed because not only was he not invited to exhibit, he wasn't even invited to go and look round. He didn't even get a complimentary ticket. So in spite of the fact that IBM and Microsoft are insisting that OS2 is an open operating system, the show was very definitely an attempt to keep it as an IBM environment for as long as possible.
What sort of applications were there? And there weren't many, were there? Apart from the ones we featured this morning.
There was Ventura, there was Lotus, there was Ashton Tate, there was the SPC applications, and there was only one vertical market application there. There was a company called Tydac who had a very nice terrain mapping package. After that, every single other stand really was some kind of database, language, development tool, network manager.
The sort of mechanics, if you like, of the whole thing, rather than the actual real applications.
Nuts and bolts and utilities. Nothing that was actually really about running a business. And even the OS2 user group stand, which was there, they had their new magazine there.
Yes.
Open it up to the applications page, 2 pages of networking and utilities, and half a page of applications. I mean, when OS2 was first announced, Comdex a couple of years back,
Dave, yes.
They were all wandering around with badges saying OS over 2 equals half an operating system. Well, it may have come on from then in terms of completeness as an operating system,
yes,
but as a commercial environment, it's still no further.
OS2 over 2 is half a show, in other words?
Oh, definitely half a show.
OK, well, Dave, thank you very much indeed. Dave Biggins there, who is more usually seen in the programme reviewing machines in our benchmark slot. But now a machine that Dave might like to get his hands on. While industry analysts agree that laptops are a growth area for sales, there is enormous competition for the market. At the one end is a laptop as a reduced desk machine, at the other the pocket machine, and beyond that, the notebook. The problem has always been how to bridge the gap between the office and the home. Well, Ken Young's been to see Dynabook, a company who believe that they have a product that just that.
Today's marketplace has now got desktop computers, and it's got laptop computers and notebook computers. And we believe there's a sophisticated computer user. And to try and classify that, it's probably the person who is the two-computer, one-person user. You've got a computer in the office, or a computer at home, or a computer in the office, and a portable. And what Dynabook is designed to try and do is to match the real requirements of that user, in so much as it's extremely modular. The user can decide exactly which parts of the computer he requires. It's as powerful as the majority of desktop computers are today. It's expandable as the majority of desktop computers are today. And it has a high level of connectivity.
What sort of technology has gone into the making of it?
It uses a lot of industry standard components. So it's using the Intel 286 chip. It's using standard hard disk drives. So there's nothing different in there. So it's completely industry standard from that point of view. Probably the major difference between this and the perceived competition is its modularity, the ability to be able to bolt things together. And then if you had to pick a technical difference, it's in its magnesium casing. The actual Dynabook itself uses magnesium as opposed to plastic, which means we have a far more robust machine, which is obviously critical if one's moving it around with you. Also, it uses, because of the magnesium, it dissipates heat far better than most plastics do, right? which means in the engineering we've been able to put into their component parts which you might not have been able to put into a unit with plastic because it might have overheated. And what that brings out at the end of the day is a very lightweight, very sturdy, very powerful unit, which enables the user to use it wherever he is going to be working.
So who are you aiming it at?
The marketplace for this product, we believe, is at the top end of the computer user. We believe that the computer marketplace today is now extremely mature one. And like most mature marketplaces, once you've actually reached that stage, the user knows what he wants. He has a tick list of ideals, so it's got to be so many megahertz. It's got to have so much hard disk drive. It's got to be this quality of screen, right? And that is industry standard. And once they've reached that, then they look for other reasons for purchasing that equipment. A bit like when one goes out and buys a motor car. Right? A lot of people will go out and buy a Ford Granada, someone else will go out and buy a BMW, and someone else will go out and buy a Mercedes. They look for other reasons. The reasons we believe people will look for on the Dynabook is, first of all, it is at the top end of its range as regards to processing power and capabilities in the physical size and the weight of the unit. We believe it will appeal, as I said earlier on, to the person who understands what computing is about, but wants to be able to have the ability to move around with their computer without the aggravation. The problem you've got if you've got a laptop and a desktop is you will obviously you have different pieces of equipment, and in some instances they have different keyboard layouts, so you have to remember which keyboard layout you're going for. If you haven't got that, then you might have different pieces of software on the equipment, right? And if you've managed to crack that, it is in our research, and I'm sure it's true, that in practically 99.95% of the case, you'll have a different database, because you may well have taken your laptop home, been working on it at home, typed in some information, right, and then you go to the office and then you do some different work on the machine in the office and you forget to either lap link them across, right, or to take a disk out and put it into the machine. So you build up different databases. Now, it doesn't matter how hard you try, as you go down the route 6, 9, 10 months, you'll have different databases on the two machines. With the Dynabook, you don't have that problem because it all sits within a central unit and it's designed to be a desktop and a laptop.
And what about cost?
Pitched right in at where everyone expects it to, between starting at around £3,000 up to £4,500, depending upon the configuration. It's a bit like saying, I'm going to buy a BMW. It starts at £15,000 and then the user decides what they want to add on as extras.
Well, the rather unique Dynabook product there. Well, rumour was rife last weekend that hackers were breaking into the systems of some major banks and offering to tell them how it was done in return for consultancy work. Well, it's nice work if you can get it. But what are the main risks for computerised banking systems and how can banks prevent them? In the studio this morning on this week's Face to Face, we have Sheila Keddy, a senior consultant with Computer Sciences Corporation.
Sheila, welcome to Computer Channel this morning.
Thank you.
So, do you think it's a good idea to allow hackers to break into your system to test your security? Is it called Tiger
teething?
Tiger teeth.
No, if I were a senior executive, I'd be going to get professional computer security people in to do that, so that I previously had a contract about what they were going to do, and that I knew that they were honest people and were going to be telling me the results. I wouldn't trust a hacker.
Is it quite a common thing to allow? I mean, British Telecom used to do it. Try and let the system get open and allow people to try and crack it. Is it something that a lot of companies do? Do you think?
It's a good idea in the sense that you find out whether your computer control procedures are really working. So if you are going to ask a Tiger team to pretend to do the kind of attack that worries you, then you'll find out whether that attack would work or not. And all sorts of interesting results come up. You know, you find out that people can get in the building, that people are leaving passwords in locked desk drawers, which are really easy to open. And you find out what people can do when they get in the system. But they do need to be people whom you've already asked to do that.
Yes, far more formal procedure than the merely haphazard way that some people may appear to be.
And if the Tiger team person gets caught, they need something that says, it's okay, the chairman said I could do this. They're going to end up in jail.
We were talking yesterday about the computer misuse bill and everything else. Are there loopholes within that says, you know, you can't prosecute me if you haven't got proper security procedures in place? It's a sort of let-off hook, if you like.
I haven't spotted anything like that yet. It's going to be very interesting to see that act in use, because it now does make it an offence to hack, even if all you do is just the simple act of obtaining unauthorised access. So that could get you 6 months. And then if you do that with an intent to commit another offence, even if you don't commit the other offence, and even if you wouldn't have succeeded, you could still be liable to 5 years. So it looks as if it's going to be very useful in terms of a deterrent.
The law looks fairly draconian, doesn't it? Okay, so what can you do to stop hackers getting into your system? A fairly daunting task.
Well, ideally don't have any lines at all, but that's not practical from the business sense. So if you have to have dial-up lines, then you're going to have mechanisms in there so that you know the identity of people who are coming in, and you can test that they're doing the right things. So simple measures to prevent, to make it hard for the hacker.
Okay, so what sort of procedures can you put in place then?
Right, well, dial back, for instance. The hacker's probably going to be using their own terminal. Now, you could have, therefore, identities on all the authorised terminals in your system, and the first thing that the computer does when somebody dials in is not only say, well, who are you? And do I know that? So do you know the password? But are you using the right terminal? And you could go on and say, is it the right time of day? So, you know, they might be saying, yep, I'm Clive Couldwell, and they know your password, so I think it's you. But I'm not expecting you to be working from a terminal in southwest London, and I'm not expecting you to be working at 2 a.m. in the morning. So I say, fine, you don't get access.
Your background is very much from a government point of view, where the concept of risk analysis and a more formal methodology is quite commonplace. Do you find that, presumably there are a fixed series of things that you should do to make your organisation and computer system more secure? Is that being transferred very much into the commercial sector? Are people following a route plan, if you like, to make their systems quite secure?
The problem with route plans is if they've been written for somebody else, they can take you out of their way, and they're built for the kind of vehicle that you're not running. So we go for practical computer security, where we'll talk with an organisation about what the real business risks are to them, which won't necessarily be the same from one organisation to another. And then how much money do they want to spend, and what's the most cost-effective way of spending that money? So there's a map there, and the route is particular to the individual organisation.
So you're asking companies to have their own consultancy, or sort of audit, if you like?
To go in and assess the risks in terms of their own business objectives and their own technology and the way that they are handling their own staff.
Finally, do you think this is something that shareholders are going to ask for companies to actually bring in consultants to actually do an official audit of their security system?
It's prudent for any company to be aware of what the security risks are and how they're handling them. And it's our experience that coming in from outside, we can provide that objectively and clearly for them.
Sheila Kelly, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Ken.
Well, now for the return for the one and only Dave Biggins. He's taking part in our benchmark spot, and for newcomers, that's the part in the programme where we take apart the latest hardware offerings and put them through a series of tests to give hopefully meaningful comparisons to help you choose the best machine. This week, Dave Biggins looks at 486 machines, offering very different facilities. I think we're coming back.
Today, we're going to look at two 486 machines. A tower system designed to be multi-user, and a typical desktop 486 PC. The tower is Comart's latest offering. The desktop is from ICL. These two machines illustrate the choice for the small self-contained work unit: multiple PCs or a single multi-user system. To make comparisons easier, we ran both systems under DOS, although Comart comes with concurrent DOS for multi-user applications. The Comart system is a rugged, floor-standing tower system. It takes 2 people to move it, using built-in handles near the base. The front panel has power on and disk activity LEDs, a reset button and a security key lock. Beneath this are the storage devices: a 5¼ floppy drive, a tape backup drive, and a 170 megabyte SCSI hard disk. The system's interface ports are housed in a recess that's accessed from the top. Cables attached to these ports are passed out through a window in the rear of the system and can be guided down a cable channel to floor level. Serial and parallel ports, keyboard port and a PS2 mouse interface are all connected directly to the motherboard, There are 10 expansion slots apparent, although when we look inside, only 5 are actually available. Getting into this system is not easy, mostly due to all the RFI screening. But remember that it's designed as a multi-user system, not a standard PC. The outer casing is easy enough, just the single screw at the front. Once this is off, there are 2 steel plates covering the expansion bay and the peripheral bay. The plates are to prevent radio emission, which increases with larger systems and a greater number of users. These plates are not easy to remove. Once you get the expansion bay plate off, a clear and uncluttered design is revealed. The motherboard is a standard Intel 401 board with a 486 processor running at 25 MHz. There's no slot for a coprocessor, but of course the 486 contains an on-chip coprocessor. The expansion slots already occupied include intelligent disk and tape controller boards, a memory board, a SCSI expansion interface, a VGA monitor card, and an interface to external serial terminals for additional users. The DRS M75 is a 486-based compact desktop PC. It's one of a range of DRS workstations designed to cover the complete range of desktop computing. The system supplied is configured with 4 MB of RAM, 1 fixed disk, and 1 3.5-inch floppy drive. There's a security lock on the side at the front, and the machine is opened by removing 2 screws at the back. Inside, it's both compact and crowded. Much of the motherboard extends beneath the power supply and disk drives, making any necessary maintenance more complex. There's a slot underneath the existing drives for an additional storage device, which looks as if it's designed for a 5.25-inch drive. Most of the peripherals interface directly to the motherboard. These include 2 serial ports and a parallel port, the disk drives, and a mouse and a keyboard port at the front. The exception is the monitor interface, which is from an internal expansion card driving the VGA. There are only 4 expansion slots, of which only 3 are available. Expansion cards fit horizontally. There are 2 problems to this arrangement. Firstly, the maximum number of cards is limited to the restricted vertical space of the device, in this case 4. But secondly, the lowest card in particular makes access to the motherboard very difficult. It would completely hide the 486 processor, but as there's no requirement to fit a coprocessor, this is perhaps no big deal. But look at the RAM slots. This layout is excellent in itself and can support up to 16 megabytes of onboard RAM, but unfortunately RAM installation becomes increasingly difficult as expansion boards are fitted, and if you look closely, it's evident that nothing but the shortest of cards could fit into the bottom slot because of the height of any RAM installation. Effectively, there are only 2 slots for expansion, and if one of these is a network card, there's not much more that you can do with the system. The ICL system is a good solid workhorse, well built and solidly designed, if a little cramped. As a database system, spreadsheet platform, or the base of a power system, it will be an excellent choice. Comart's approach of using highly intelligent I/O systems for disk and peripheral access clearly pays off, making the Comart 486 Tower the most powerful system overall that we've yet seen. The offloading of I/O to separate processors in this way also increases the overlapping of I/O and processing in a multi-user environment, giving better performance for more users. I'm impressed.
Our Dave Biggins there with details of 486 machines. Telford has been the host this week for COMEX, the largest European mobile communications show. We have Peter Purton on the telephone line to report on what's actually happening there. Hello, Peter.
Hi.
How are you?
Very well. COMEX weather's not exactly wonderful, but thank God they've got a centrally heated hall here.
So what's the mood of the show, Pete?
It's definitely up. Despite worries in the industry about bad debt and also the high interest rates like everybody else, the actual atmosphere here is very optimistic. The exhibitors have spent much more than ever before, and the organisers are reporting 40% visitors more than last year.
And Brian Carlsberg was up there. What did he have to say?
He opened the show, and he also visited a number of the stands. He's in an awkward position, of course, because although he's advising on the duopoly review, which the government is currently undertaking to see how they can increase competition if it's necessary in the UK, he can't really say anything. That's up to the minister. So all he could do is drop a few hints, and that is what he did. And the hints that he dropped were that he'd like to see more competition and that he'd like to see it coming from the mobile sector. What this means in practice remains to be seen, but it could be something like CT2 being used to provide a cordless local loop, so there could be competition in the local area where the charges are still the highest.
What about the general image of the industry? Are they trying to do anything about that?
Yes, they are. In fact, they're very concerned about that on two sort of areas. One is, of course, the quality, which has been receiving a lot of bad publicity over the last few years. The other is their marketing skills. They feel they're quite a young industry and need to improve that. And they've addressed both issues at this conference, which goes with the exhibition. The first one they addressed by launching the Land Mobile Radio Quality Assurance Scheme. This would be a set of guidelines for all people engaged in the industry on how to deal with customers and how to install equipment, on everything, in fact, to do with the services they provide. So far, they started with the aerial installation because that seems to be the area causing most hassle. Rachel said that over 70% of the complaints it gets, it finds boil down to bad aerial installations.
What about the telepoint industry? Obviously had a lot of bad press through not really getting many subscribers yet. Are they trying harder?
Well, to be honest, it's still very much on hold. It was thought that BIPS, BYPS, the Barclays, Philips and Shell-backed consortium might launch their service at the show. They haven't done. In fact, they've had probably the most interesting stand. It's been a crazy golf course, attracting crowds to come and play crazy golf, but no products. Or same goes for the others, really. It's low-key. I think when it comes down to it, they're all waiting to see how things will develop themselves.
Well, we look forward to taking up some more of the issues in our mobile dossier programme in a couple of weeks' time, Pete. Thanks very much for giving us the update.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye now. And now the news. Bosch Telecom is tipped to be the new owner of British Telecom's share in Mitel, the UK-Canadian PABX company. Buying BT's majority stake will make the German company Europe's fourth largest telecoms equipment maker, with interests in mobile and satellite communications, private switching and transmission. British Telecom bought 51% of Mitel 5 years ago. The plan was to improve management of voice and data integration, but the deal didn't live up to expectations. Bosch Telecom has come from nowhere over the last 5 years to become a major player in the market. It already owns Germany's ANT and Telenorma and France's JS Telecom.
More power is on the way for digital customers. A new series of VAX 6000 Model 500 boxes is due to be launched next week, offering up to 50% improvement in performance. The machines come with VMS 5.4, the latest version of the digital operating system. Customers will have to buy this and the more expensive 128 megabyte memory boards. Also expected is a new member of the VAX family based on the Intel i4X6 chip and running a different version of Unix. This machine will target the small to medium-sized business.
ETSI, the European Telecom Standards Institute, is to consider not one but 4 interim standards for cordless communications. The CT3 and CEPT1 cordless specifications were accepted as basis for new standards last week. Sweden's Ericsson and Denmark's Dancall proposed them at ETSI's technical assembly in Nice. DECT, or Digital European Cordless Telephone, is already under consideration, along with CT2, developed in the UK.
14 computer companies, including IBM, Olivetti, Apricot and Siemens, have formed the Microchannel Developers Association, I beg your pardon. They aim to promote the adoption of microchannel architecture as an open standard and help speed up the release of new products. Well, MCA technology has been tightly controlled by IBM since its announcement in 1987. As a result, many companies have come to see it as proprietary. Bad news in the current open systems climate, hence the new fan club. The ISA consortium, led by Compaq, already exists for the promotion of the Alternative Extended Industry Standard Architecture, or ISA.
16 companies will join together in a state-of-the-art open systems demonstration next month, interworking via the X400 open messaging standard. Eurocinet, the Open Systems Industry Association, will host the demonstration, which it claims is the most advanced yet. Anyone interested can see it at the Open Systems 90 exhibition from the 7th to the 9th of November at Olympia, London.
IBM has denied that it's looking to save 2,000 UK jobs through early retirement. The denial came as third-quarter results showed an increase in profits and overall revenues, but a drop in sales. Profits rose to $1.1 billion from $877 million. Overall revenue was up 7% to $15.3 billion, but sales were down 1% to $9 billion.
Customers can expect improved dealings with over 2,000 telecom service providers across Europe. The companies are all members of the European Telecommunications Service Association, ETSA, and include British Telecom and Mercury. At a meeting last week, they agreed a code of practice covering how they do business with their customers. The code is to cover employment practices and product approvals. ETSA's board of directors, headed by Alan Cobb, will be keeping watch.
The chips of today are small fry compared with those who we'll see over the next 10 years, so say microprocessor experts. A panel of semiconductor engineers has predicted chips 50 times faster than those today. At the moment, an advanced microprocessor will house about 1.2 million transistors. By the year 2000, this will have risen to 100 million. The engineers were speaking at the annual Microprocessor Forum in California. Meanwhile, Intel has predicted a 250 megahertz 386 compatible chip with voice recognition and digital video interactive capabilities. Called Micro 2000, is based on the rate of development so far.
As we reported earlier in the programme, IBM's microchannel architecture now has its own fan club. In our viewpoint this week, The Guardian's computer editor, Jack Schofield, explains why he won't be joining and explains why he's become less of a fan of Big Blue.
I'm very worried about IBM. It seems to have lost its ability to foist de facto standards on the industry, as the lack of support for its microchannel expansion bus, OS2 operating system and SAA architecture show. Worse, IBM is now being obliged to follow other people's standards. Ethernet, X-Window, Sun's NFS, Unix, OSI, Adobe's PostScript and many more. This is worrying because it goes against everything that made IBM rich and famous. In his book Big Blue, Richard Thomas de la Mata, who worked for the US Justice Department on the last IBM antitrust suit, wrote, and I quote, "Not only does control over interfaces enable IBM to shut out unwelcome visitors, but that control can also be used to force customers to buy inferior IBM products." In fact, he says, rarely do purely technical considerations dictate new IBM interfaces. Rather, they are part of the corporation's fundamental drive for isolated, competition-free markets and the high profits they yield. Back in 1987, IBM was being beaten by the competition in the PC market. Its market share was declining. It responded in the usual way, by trying to change the rules to its own advantage. It would drop the standard PC-AT expansion bus and the standard PC-DOS in favour of a proprietary IBM bus, the microchannel architecture, and a new operating system with proprietary IBM bits, OS2 Extended Edition. In the old days, this would have been enough to squeeze out upstarts such as Compaq. But strangely, in the next couple of years, Compaq's turnover trebled and its profits quadrupled. OS2 turned out to be an embarrassing flop, while MCA has done so badly that last week an association was formed to support it. It's frankly embarrassing when IBM has companies such as Apricot, Japanese-owned PC manufacturer, coming to its rescue, though in fairness the MCA Developers Association does have a couple of major PC suppliers as members, Olivetti and NEC, both of whom are also founder members of the rival ESA group. When it comes to OS2, there's never been a day when someone or other wasn't telling me that all its problems would be solved when the next version came out. Several releases later, success is now supposed to come with 2.0, or if not that, the next complete rewrite in C. I'm not holding my breath. Windows 3 has shipped 1 million copies in the last 4 months, and the major software houses which backed OS2, like Lotus and WordPerfect, are desperately writing Windows 3 versions of their software as fast as they can. Meanwhile, IBM has taken over the development work for OS2 for PC compatibles, leaving Microsoft free to concentrate on Windows 3.0, Windows M for multimedia, Windows 8 for handwriting recognition, and others yet undreamt of. IBM is also working on PM Lite, a version of OS2 which doesn't require users to spend loads of money upgrading their hardware just to run the operating system. But PM Lite's a very odd idea. It's hard to see why any intelligent person would buy it instead of Windows or DeskView. Clearly it's designed to sell to corporate data processing departments. When IBM owned 75% of the computer market, this kind of approach didn't matter much. It could do what it liked, whether it benefited customers or not. Now IBM's share is 25 or 30% and falling, simply isn't good enough. IBM can no longer dictate de facto standards, can no longer arbitrarily manipulate interfaces and ignore the consequences. Years ago, IBM tried to stop ASCII. Now everyone supports it, and who cares if you support EBCDIC? In the 80s, IBM ignored Ethernet. Now everybody supports it, including IBM. but few care whether or not you support Token Ring. Everyone supports Unix and OSI communications, and IBM is already bowing down to these industry standards, indeed, being opener than thou. The RS6000 range is one result. It shows IBM trying to compete with smaller, nimbler rivals by delivering better kit at a lower price. What a splendid idea. More, please.
Jack Schofield there, rounding up the programme with some opinions on IBM and OS2. We've had just about enough of OS2 for 1 week, I think. And today's headlines. STC's up for sale. Alcatel's tipped to be the likely buyer. Mike Newton, Apple's new MD, says the new range announced this week will run head-to-head in the home user market. IBM are due to bring out a new version of OS2 running in under 2 megabytes on a new range of 486 machines before the end of October. And news from Oftel head Brian Carlsberg, news from COMEX. Brian talks about more competition in the local telephone services, CT2 over a local loop. Well, I'll be back next week with our dossier programme, the first of 2 programmes on CASE, Computer-Aided Software Engineering. We'll be looking at the new technique that develops new applications quickly and efficiently. My guest then will be Richard Barker, Senior Vice President at Database Specialist Oracle, David Fairbairn, Group Managing Director of James Martin Associates, and Leading Management Consultant Alan Topliss. If you want to see that programme, the only way you can receive it is to subscribe, and you can do that right now by calling Nick Bancroft at the computer channel at 071 730 2222. I'll repeat that for you, 071 730 2222. And finally, is there something we should know? The Computer Channel News Desk received a letter on Tuesday from ICL with a postmark still showing them to be an STC company. Well, Fujitsu may well be interested. That's all for today. Please join us next week on the Computer Channel. From all of us here, goodbye.